looking through, considering my options for university, right? One major thing that stood out to me is that if I really wanted to become a doctor, there are these programs that are known as combined BSMD programs that can facilitate that path, right? And so what these programs essentially do is they some give you guaranteed admission based on whether you meet certain metrics, certain standards, some stuff like that. A lot of them don't require you to take the MCAT or interview for medical school, stuff like that. Or even if they do require you to take the MCAT, a lot of the times the cutoff for the MCAT score is a lot lower than would be acceptable through the traditional route. And even sometimes a very high MCAT score, you can have that and still get rejected because of other factors in your application. So really the BSMD program as an idea just, kind of solidifies that commitment to medicine in that sense. And so, yeah, so when I looked at that, when I discovered that when I was applying, it was something that really stood out to me. And so that's why I primarily applied to BSMD programs when I was in that process. Obviously I had like my safeties, I had my targets, I had my reaches, stuff like that. The reach being obviously this program, but yeah, that was the goal behind my college application process, to become a doctor or at least facilitate that path in the best way possible for me. So, I mean, yeah, so that's like kind of a brief summary of what BSMD programs are. If there are any more specific questions, or I guess you guys have like pre-prepared questions that I could answer as well. Yeah, if you guys want to, feel free, go ahead and ask. Carson, you're muted.
Thank you. I was going to explain the Q&A feature, but you've already figured out how that works. So wonderful. We do have some pre-prepared questions. And I would like to ask you a little bit more before we get into those pre-prepared questions about,
Sure.
okay, what does like going into medicine, being a doctor look like for you? Specifically, like what did you decide to study at Brown? I mean, I already know this, but like for other people, why did you
Mhm.
decide to study at Brown? And how does that relate to like the potential career you want to go into? And then
Mhm.
also, like what BSMD programs or other just like solid pre-med programs would you recommend?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess, so was the first part of that question you kind of cut out, was it what I'm studying here,
Yeah,
or? Okay,
yeah.
okay, perfect. So at Brown currently, we don't really declare until our sophomore year. I think it's our spring semester of our sophomore year. But at this moment in time, I'm thinking of declaring and concentrating or majoring in health and human biology, and the reason behind that is just primarily because it gives me kind of a breadth of access to a lot of not only pre-medical curriculum, but also just things that I'm interested in. Like I'm interested in that, in all the biology stuff that you guys will like learn in high school and stuff like that, right? And in the college level, at the college level, it's usually a lot more complex. And, get to see real applications of the stuff that you learn in high school and at earlier education levels. And so that's primarily why I chose that. But then aside from that concentration, I'm also sprinkling in a little bit of entrepreneurship, in there, a little bit of finance entrepreneurship, because at the end of the day, what I want to do is I want to start a private practice as a doctor, and a private practice, in essence, is a sort of business, is a sort of, organization that you run, that you manage. A lot of technique and skill and real practice goes into that, and so that's kind of why I wanted to put a little bit of an entrepreneurial spin on my undergraduate education, just so I could have the skills really necessary to be able to manage something like that in the future. And then let's see, what was the second part? The second part was about other like pre-med programs, BSMD programs that you could consider applying to. So yeah, there are a ton, like there, even if you search them up, like if you search up like top 10 BSMD programs or just BSMD programs in general, there are a lot of internet resources that will give you insight into that sort of thing. But I mean, just to name a few, I remember I applied to Case Western's BSMD program. I applied to UKMC's BSMD program. Some of these programs being accelerated in the sense that they're 6 years as opposed to 8 years, or like 7 years as opposed to 8 years. But a little bit of a drawback there. If it's accelerated, that means that sometimes you'll lose out on summers and stuff, and you'll have to get through your undergraduate curriculum a lot faster. And I mean, it's a little bit rushed as well, but yeah. So, but I mean, regardless, UKMC is a great option. They have a 6-year program there. Case Western's BSMD program is an excellent option as well. I believe theirs is 7 years. I could be wrong on that. I believe Rice has a program as well. I think Northwestern used to have a program, but then they kind of disbanded it in recent years, so I guess don't even worry about that. But another major program that I was also considering applying to, like right before my decision came out for the Brown program, was APME, which is the Arizona. I think it's ASU. It's affiliated with ASU. It's a wonderful program there. I believe it's also 8 years, but it kind of mimics what the mission statement behind PLME. I mean, they kind of sound similar as well. But that's just another brilliant program to consider. I mean, I don't know anybody who's in the program per se right now, but I've just, based on what I've seen on the internet, YouTube videos, stuff like that, and just really researching what the program has to offer, that would probably be my second choice if I was to have applied and gotten admitted into that program. So yeah, I mean, that's just a few that, like, just to rattle off them, but on the internet you can find a bunch of them that are affiliated with the various schools. I also know Drexel has one, but theirs still requires you to take the MCAT, but their MCAT cutoff is a lot lower. So you can just meet that cutoff and then be guaranteed admission. But yeah, just a bunch of programs with a lot of different schools, something you can definitely look into.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, that's really good to hear about, especially the different options, so students can look at maybe what good choices for BSMD programs are, or what good choices for like things to study are, especially if you want that ladder mobility that you usually don't get if you just study like biology, or for example. Okay, so I do see some questions in the Q&A. Perfect. I'm going to hit the pre-asked questions first. So one person asks, I don't know if you want me to say your name or not, but like I could. One person asks, okay, biology versus biochemistry for pre-med. A bunch of biochem pre-meds. Which is better?
All right. Well, I mean, that's definitely a loaded question because it really depends on what you're going for, right? So when it comes to choosing an undergraduate concentration or major as a pre-medical student, right? You don't one important thing to know is that you don't necessarily have to choose something in the STEM field. Like there are some pre-meds who will, major in comparative literature, or like, just English or something, right? And then still apply and be accepted to medical school, right? So I mean, it's less so about what your concentration is, but then more so what you do with it, how you spin it in your story and your application to programs, whether that be medical school or BSMD programs, stuff like that, right? But I guess specifically with regard to which is better between biochemistry and just regular biology, I mean, honestly, it just depends. Obviously, biochemistry, I would say, is a lot more intensive in its course requirements and, just the credits that you're going to have to meet and stuff. You have to take like more courses, and then I believe also more upper level advanced courses, especially with the chemistry part of that. Like a lot of pre-meds dread the organic chemistry like rotation, the organic chemistry series, which is both Orgo 1 and Orgo 2. A lot of people consider those to be weed out classes in a sense, especially Orgo 1. And I'm pretty sure most biochemistry programs are going to require you to take not only the entire series, but then also, possibly inorganic or some other type of advanced chemistry, stuff like that. So, I mean, there's just an advanced level of difficulty there, which I would say does have its benefits in the sense that perhaps it prepares you better for a future in medicine where it's going to be quite like a rigorous journey, endeavor, stuff like that. But I mean, I wouldn't say it's necessary per se. I mean, so honestly just comes down to what your interests are and where they lie, and so yeah, I mean, it really just depends on what you find interest in. And I mean, I guess maybe biochemistry could help you stand out more, but I also would say that a lot of pre-medical students do stay around that area, the biology, the biochemistry area. So I mean, wouldn't be really too much of a factor, but it really just comes down to what you enjoy.
Okay, great answer. Yeah, definitely for like thinking about what you want to study as a pre-med. It's important, but it's also not very like necessary for you to go down one specific road because you have like options with that. I know that, I mean, at least for me, on the outside of the pre-med sphere, like classes like Orgo just seemed very difficult because like last year I was basically in this dorm which was substance free. So everyone whose parents told them to be a doctor also told them to go to the substance free dorm. So this dorm was just full of substance free people or substance or pre-meds. And you could literally feel the temperature in the room change when there was an orgo exam. like you would walk downstairs and you would see literally 30 people in the main lounge, like hunched over their computers doing like the reactions or whatever. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so intense. And when you'd when you'd see the midterm group of people and the final group of people, different sizes. So like Orgo is definitely a class that you want to be looking out for, I think, and be thinking, okay, how do I want to approach this? Especially if you're like serious about um, taking the full sequence and really going into medicine afterward. My father teaches chemistry, and he revels in the destroying of students' dreams. I don't know how happy I feel about that actually, but like he'll often, I mean, like he'll often fail students who like don't show up to class at all, and then when they come talk to him, they're expecting a higher grade, right? He reiterates, and I want to reiterate for you that it's very, very, very dependent on like your own inputs and your own effort. And if you are concerned or you're not sure about your ability to like full send, give it 100%, then be sure of that. Okay. So I have. So this question also asks, do some Pleme, don't so ooh, do some students in Pleme also have a non-life sciences major? What majors are they?
Yeah. So great question. It kind of feeds into what I was discussing before, like how you don't necessarily, even through the traditional medical school application route, you don't necessarily have to major or concentrate in a field of study that directly lines up with medicine, right? Like there's one kid that I know, his name is Griffin. He's in the program as well. He's studying, pretty sure, comparative literature, comparative English literature, or something like that, and and he's doing fine, right? He'll still take his preclinical requirements and stuff like that, like organic chemistry, stuff like that, the biologies that he needs to meet, stuff like that, physics, stuff like that. But he, at the end of the day, gets to, pursue something that he's passionate about, get to, indulge in, aspects of literature that fascinate him and stuff like that, and then still also access that medical curriculum. So, I mean, however, although that is a possible route for traditional pre-meds, going through the traditional route, it is, I would say, and I'd like to admit, a lot easier when you're in a BSMD program because I mean, you don't necessarily have to apply to medical school in order to stay in the program. So you do have the freedom, especially with the open curriculum at Brown, to really pursue that which interests you. So that's just something to consider there. But yeah, a lot of people do not, major in pre-medical sciences and stuff like that. A lot of people do, I also know a good amount of people that, are majoring in biology or chemistry or neuroscience, stuff like that. I mean, I guess I'm one of them, but yeah, it's not necessarily required. It just depends on your path.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Thank you. Ruthika, does that answer your question kind of about like you being able to have some freedom with the major you apply for and then maybe work it out later, change after? Yes. Wonderful. Bonus points for us for accidental question answering. Um, okay, I just saw a pop-up, but it disappeared. Interesting. Okay, so now the questions, actually, let me ask one more like BSMD PLEME question. And then the rest of them kind of shift towards more of the admissions process, which makes sense. Okay. So did you apply early to PLEME? Just a quick one.
Yes, I did. Yeah, early decision. Yeah, too.
And then you said your second option for PLEME was the APME at ASU?
Yeah, APME. Yeah, that would have been my second option. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And okay, this is a fun question because I've heard a lot of stories about applying out of PLEME.
Hmm.
So the way this works, right, is that okay, I don't want to spoil it, but I'm also gonna kind of steal it because it's kind of fun. So you apply to PLEME, you get in. You're saying basically, I will go to or Warren Alpert Medical School, or you can apply out, right? But if you apply out, correct me if I'm wrong, you lose guaranteed admission, right? So you
You
can
do.
still apply to Warren Alpert, but if you apply out as well, then you kind of like basically made it no guaranteed anymore, right?
Mhm.
So this question asks, okay, are you able to apply to other medical schools? And if so, would being in a BSMD show up on your transcript and make you look more competitive, or either make you other schools like more wary because you're guaranteed somewhere else?
Mhm. So that's a great question. So yeah, obviously you can in the program, being in the program, you can apply out, whenever you may feel like that. But again, like the caveat there, the pitfall there is that once you apply out, not even once you get in, once they find out that you sent an application to another medical school, you lose your spot in the Warren Alpert class of whatever year you are, And so it's definitely something there should be a lot of thought that would go into a decision like that. With regard to whether it would make you look better to medical schools that you would apply to, well, I mean, I guess technically they would be able to see. I mean, it wouldn't say in your transcript. It doesn't say in your transcripts anywhere that whether you're in the PLME or not. Maybe if you got like a recommendation from a PLME dean, they could know somehow. But I mean, you could just include it in the resume that you send. Then they could just cross verify it. But I don't think that would be necessarily the way that you could increase your competitiveness, or that would increase your competitiveness to apply out to another medical school. I think it's kind of just encompassing the fact that usually people who are getting into these very, very competitive BSMD programs are already talented enough to, probably do the entire pre-med grind and apply out to another medical school and get in regardless, right? So it's like, yes, like there is a very high likelihood that you can apply out and get into a medical school. In fact, the general pre-med success rate for medical school applications of people who apply, I believe, is anywhere from 80 to 90%. So it's actually pretty high, assuming you make your way through the entire process, take the MCAT, stuff like that. And I mean, so yeah, I mean, I guess it could, in a sense, boost your chances, probably not by too much of getting into another medical school, but it's more so the fact that the student that you are that was able to get you into the program could also get you into another medical school. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that kind of links back to how kind of all admissions work, because at the end of the day, like the whole process is just an interview about you, an evaluation of you, and your ability to like communicate, and your your effect, your impact on the world, even if it's just like a relatively minor impact, just like the way you impact the world is more important than like any stat or any framework or anything like that. Okay. I did see a question. Did you consider the UMKC 6-year combined program? I believe you said yes, right?
Yeah, I did, but I mean, again, the pitfall or like the drawback or, con of getting into the program is like it's 6 years, so it's accelerated. And I believe I went to an information session about the program, on a Zoom call, back when I was applying, and they said that, because you can't shorten your medical school education, that's going to be 4 years regardless. So what you have to do effectively is cram 4 years of undergraduate education into 2 years, right? So how they do that specifically, their program is they give you less time off during the summer and stuff, and you don't have a lot of free time to go and see your family and things like that. And so that's something that definitely went into my consideration of the program. Like, yes, it's good, it could be advantageous to start medical school early, end early, be young when you finish, but at the same time, one, starting medical school so early, do you think you'll be mentally prepared, mentally mature enough to, to take on such a challenge that is medical school? But then two, you'd also be losing out on not only a lot of the friends that you may make during your undergraduate experience that would be in your same grade level, but then, I mean, thirdly, missing out on, family events or stuff that can happen during the summer, or just, being able to spend quality time with your family and stuff. So that's something that definitely went into my consideration of that program. But yeah, I was considering it though.
Okay, wonderful. So yeah, definitely important factors to consider. I feel like on this side, your side of the application process, all it's like you're thinking about things that are more like thinking about more like prestige or like, I don't know, career paths or whatever, but it's kind of like, how do I say this? It's like you're making your own bed when you're applying, but you've got to sleep in it for like 4 years, right? Where you're setting yourself up for something, and right now when you're not experiencing it, it's kind of easy to like backload all the stress and not really think about, okay, how do I fit with the school, one, and two, how do I how do I manage going through this program for 4 years, right? Because 4 years is a long time, like a really long time, and it's long if you don't like where you're at or how it's going. And a lot of the time, like, you don't make that consideration off the get go because like prestige is distracting, for example, or like cost is distracting. So it's very important, like when you're going to the programs, not even just for your YS essays, but also for your YS essays, that you are like you're very like well educated, say well read on like these specific experiences of going through the program, going to that school, whatever it is, not only so you can speak on it, but also so that you are prepared for it if you do decide to attend. Okay, wonderful. Okay, let's get to these two questions, which are older because I've been putting them on for a while. Sorry. So, a lot of people have asked what extracurriculars you did in high school and what would you recommend for high schoolers pursuing like the pre-med route. And then specifically for the idea, I don't know if you've heard of like a spike before.
Mhm.
Yeah. Every time someone brings that up, like on campus, I kind of cringe. I'm like, you're okay. But uh yeah, your spike in your application, and again, like what you did through high school, et cetera, et cetera. Specifically in terms of internships, awards, and courses, essentially.
All right. So yeah. So a lot of my high school experience was centered like a little different from other people who I know are in the program. A lot of the stuff that I did was competition based. And so one of the main things that I did was starting freshman year, continuing all the way through senior year, I was a member of the speech and debate club, and then I went on to go ahead and be captain and president of the speech and debate club for my junior and senior year. And so ever since freshman year, I'd just been debating with a partner, and so we'd compete at tournaments, at the national, international level, and get distinction, in that sense, respectively. But yeah, so debate was the first thing that I did. First year, I don't think we did too much, but we kind of did well at the regional level, local level, first place at like national qualifiers and stuff like that. But then COVID took that out. Sophomore year, same kind of thing, just competing locally. Junior year, we competed at the Harvard tournament, and I think we were like top, I don't know, like 20% of teams nationally, within the prelim stage, something like that. Then senior year, we placed first and went undefeated at the Tufts Harvard International Tournament, stuff like that. But I guess it doesn't really count because that was after I'd gotten into school. So I guess that doesn't really count. But yeah, so that's debate. So yeah, that club, something that I think what worked for me with that club is not only my dedication to it that I showed, my application, stuff like that, but then also the leadership that, I showed in the club from junior and senior year. And I mean, even as a freshman and sophomore, making sure I was going to practices and, helping out in any way that I could, even as a subordinate, right? And so another activity that I did in high school, starting from freshman year, continuing all the way through senior year, was this club that's known, or this activity that's known as DECA. And for those of you who don't know, DECA is a sort of business related kind of activity. There are many different events, marketing events, testing events, hospitality events, tourism, stuff like that. And, I also did that with a partner. And so the event that we did specifically, for any of you who are familiar, we did 3 years of the independent business plan event, and then 1 year, our senior year, of the innovation plan event. And so how that went with regard to awards, freshman year, we made it to states. we didn't qualify for international because it goes like state level and then international level for DECA. Freshman year, we didn't qualify for internationals, and we were pretty sad about that. So the day after the tournament, we started prepping for the next year, and then our sophomore year, we got first place internationally at the tournament. So that's likely because we spent all this time, prepping for it, learning from our mistakes from the first year, stuff like that. Junior year, we qualified for the international tournament, and then I think we got like a certificate of excellence or something. We placed within, I don't know, like 70th percentile or something. And then senior year, which I guess doesn't count, we did innovation plan. We got fourth at states. Oh, and also for the sophomore year, I don't know if it needs to be said, but we got first at states and then first at internationals. Then senior year, we got fourth at states, and then my partner couldn't go for the international competition, so I just went alone, and I got fourth internationally at that. And so yeah, well, I guess that doesn't really count, but that's just senior year stuff. And then let's see. So those were a bunch of my competition things. Some other, menial competitions I did. I took the national Spanish exam in freshman year. I think I got like the 93rd percentile, so I think it was like worth a silver medal or something. I did science fairs. I did, and in those I didn't get any national distinction in that. I, placed regionally and stuff and locally and stuff, but it never like went to ISEF or anything like that. And then with more of my medical extracurriculars, that's more so like my competitive side, but with my medical stuff, I not only volunteered at my local hospital, I think I logged like 179 hours throughout high school, volunteering as a patient care assistant at my local hospital, from freshman year to till junior year, I believe. I also did work with this nonprofit organization called OKUSA, which stands for the Arifite Community of the USA. And so basically what it is, it's a kind of advocacy organization for my local Nigerian community at home, and then the members of those indigenes that are present in the U.S. and abroad. And so what I did my freshman year was I co-hosted a convention to raise money for diagnostic eye technologies for people in that area, and so I think we raised, I forget what the figure is. I think it was like 35,000 or something like that. But yeah, so that's just one thing that I did there. Again, more so on that medical side, stuff like that. I was able to talk about that, and then I think I went on a medical mission that previous summer as well. So, or previous Christmas as well. And so yeah, let's see what else. What else? Medicine related things. I joined this other nonprofit organization. I think my early junior year was called Medicine Encompassed, and I was an editor for basically what Medicine Encompassed was. It was a group, a nonprofit that made articles, medically related articles, education, information, stuff like that. So I was just an editor for that organization for a little bit, and yeah, and then also late junior year, I think that summer, the summer before senior year, I started doing some small research things with some physicians that I knew that I shadowed with and stuff like that. So, and then I think I was published. Yeah, I was published before like my application. And so, I just talked about that, the research I was doing with them, and that was more analytical research. It wasn't like wet lab or anything. It was more like figuring out like associations or correlations between variables like colorectal cancer and diagnostic screening or something like that. So that's also what I did. Let's see some other things I did just for leadership related activities. And a friend started a science bowl club in high school. We led that, and I think we competed in some competitions. We didn't really go too far in them, but it was more so just the idea of being able to lead a team through that and like work through something, work through a project, stuff like that. I was never on any sort of student council. I was never class president or anything like that. I ran though, but I mean nobody picked me. But yeah, so let's see what else. So those are my medically related activities. Oh, and then I guess, yeah, it's that sophomore year, that company that we won, or the business plan that we won DECA internationals with, we at a time tried to turn that into an actual startup, and so we were working with that. We were pitching to investors and stuff like that. So I also put that there. We're actually working on that kind of thing. We're going to take it, we're going to take it public and stuff like that, but then that just didn't happen. Like I think I left the company first, and then like I think it was pivoted and something like that. But yeah, so that's like I'm just trying to see what I put on my common, or what I can remember I put on my common application. Um, yeah. So I think that's, or those are at least all the major things. You know, I did some minutia things like, just on the being on the quiz bowl team. I played soccer throughout high school, sophomore to senior year. And yeah, so it's probably my entire extracurricular profile, for high school. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of things, and it's obvious that like you're very, very accomplished in high school and you put a lot of work in. When you see like this makes me roll my eyes, but like admitted student profiles, like it's very easy to like compare yourself often. Compare yourself and be like, oh, I don't have this, I don't have this. But like remember that there are like Wisdom is one awesome student, but there are also like 73 other students, I believe, in Pleme your year. And like there's not one formula, but it's good to get maybe an idea, like a case study to get a feel of it. Okay, so also because there's so much there, you can maybe see the little like recording icon. Those of you who are here live are gonna get the recording of this first. I'm not gonna release until I believe the middle of this week or the end of this week for everybody else. So lucky day, woo! And try to include some goodies in there for you as well. Just as a big thank you to you for your time and learning with us. Okay, so one person asked, "How are you able to volunteer at a hospital before you were 16 years old?"
Um, I think my local hospital, I think it is or was a lot different in the sense that I don't think you didn't have to be 16 in order to volunteer. Like, yeah, I volunteered my freshman year, so that would make me like 15, or yeah, 15 turning 16, not 14 turning, I don't know. But yeah, I know I wasn't 16 when I started. And so my local hospital, I guess maybe due to luck or, fortune or something, they were a hospital that was a lot more accommodating in that sense, so maybe it's because I wasn't doing a lot more like intensive or like patient related task. It wasn't like I wasn't like moving anybody or anything like that. I wasn't like a senior volunteer or like a college volunteer or anything like that. So I think they let us start. I think the age cutoff for my local hospital, St. Luke's, was like 14, 15. And so I was able to start that early. And so yeah, I think it's just a hospital thing. You can look around your local hospitals, see what the age regulation is there. So
Yeah, for sure.
and it wasn't work though. So it's like I know what the working age is, 16 or something. I guess it depends on the state, but it's like volunteering. So there was no like pay or anything involved. It was
Yeah,
just solely volunteering stuff. So yeah.
yeah. And all this stuff that you did you like come at it with like a plan? Like I'm gonna do this during high school, this years, or did you just like kind of just follow what you were interested in?
Well, yeah, I think I just honestly just followed what I was interested in. I think like going into freshman year, I was just like, okay, like let me just do like let me have a passion and let me just pursue it, like things that interest me, let me do them and let me do them to the best of my ability and stuff like that, right? So one of the first things that came to interest me was debate, right? So I remember in freshman year we'd spend time, my partner and I, like going to the practices, practice mock debating against people, stuff like that, and trying to do the very best we could, or try to be the very best we could at the activity, and anytime we'd like lose or not do well at a tournament, I remember one time we actually went up to the people who had just cooked us in a round before, and we went to ask them for tips, and they gave us a lot of valuable tips on how to not only mount responses against arguments you have no idea how to respond to, but then also how to just like frame the debate and like zoom out of the minutia and like not get lost in the weeds and stuff like that. So it's really just about, I think I really just went to high school just having an idea, not necessarily having an idea of what I wanted to do, but more so the work ethic I wanted to have, so it's just the activities I that came to grow on me that I liked. I just kept pursuing to the best of my ability, and that's really when it went what went into it. And then, so obviously, since I also I knew I wanted to be a doctor, I made sure to sprinkle some preclinical activities in there, like the volunteering, nonprofit stuff, medicine and Compass, things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Um, so I'm trying to like meld these questions together in like a really cool like way, even though I've never in my life done this before. Oh shoot, this is a really good question. Darn it. Okay. Um, So, what can rising seniors do right now to increase their chances for like other BSMD programs for pre-med applications in general for PLEMI, and specifically like if you could talk about internships, like in research especially, do you know any summer programs or whatever for students who are like 15 to 16?
Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, I never did. I mean, I guess besides, it wasn't really an official internship sort of thing that I was doing the research with, like the summer before my senior year. It was just, kind of it grew from shadowing to, oh, I have an interest in research. Like if there's any way I can help, that'd be, awesome. But I don't recall, I never did any actual like summer internships, right? So I remember my freshman year summer. So there's a summer going into freshman year. So when I did the whole like nonprofit medical nonprofit thing, like that kind of presentation, the fundraiser. And then the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, that's when we were working on, Fidutom, which was the name of the company that we were working on. And we were just doing that pretty much the entire summer, preparing pitches, business plans, stuff like that. I think I also got involved with like some other, I think it was like a morning routine company. I think it was called Endo or something. I think we also did that during that summer. Then sophomore to junior summer. Oh, and then also I volunteered through all those summers. But then yeah, sophomore to junior summer, I volunteered, studied for the what's that? SAT, yeah. Studied for the SAT, and just did some activities there. And then, oh, and also, refine debate strategy just to prepare for the upcoming year, organize leadership things. I think that's when we started the club as well, stuff like that. And then junior to senior year, studying for the SAT a little bit as well, volunteering, and then obviously that research stuff. So, I mean, with regard to internships that I know of, I know that I think the most competitive one that I know of is probably the one that's with MIT. I think it's called RSI. I know a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, did that program, and so it's usually very, very good at getting you connected, integrated, stuff like that. It's also really hard to get into, but that's one program you could consider. Don't really know any other ones. I mean, you could obviously just look into things like that, and even if you wanted to pursue something, I know some kids that pursued research at their local universities, with under like a professor or something, did like cell cultures and things like that, which if I could go back into my high school like days, high school years, like that's something I definitely would have tried to look into a bit more. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, thank you. So there's definitely like a lot to be said for like kind of just going with the flow and following your passions, but also like you knew you wanted to be a doctor. There is a little bit of preparation that went into that, and of course you spoke on that and you spoke on what you did going into that process. More more towards the way of becoming someone who gets into these programs instead of just like trying to game the system. So this one question, I'm trying to kind of like piecemeal it and finish it bit by bit, but I do want to ask you, like, how did you deal with applying for like or preparing for interviews? We talked about BSMDs already, like preparing for interviews and then just generally like after medical school, like at Warren Alpert, for example, do you have to continue going to like another med program if you want to be like a neurologist or a surgeon or whatever it is?
All right, yeah. So great question. First on the interview thing. So the unique thing about Brown is that they actually don't require interviews whatsoever. Like they just don't do interviews anymore. In its place, what they have now is what's known as a video portfolio, in which you can record a maximum 2-minute video that just tells the admissions officer, a little bit about you, shows a different side of you that isn't represented in your application, and usually that's a great way to, I guess, tell more about yourself and, just, present yourself as like a multifaceted person, multifaceted character and stuff like that. Right. So I never actually did any interview. In fact, I didn't do a single interview going into the whole college process because, as I said earlier, I applied early to PLME, right, and Brown, and they don't have interviews, right? So before I could hear back from any of the other programs or any of the other schools that perhaps did do an interview, I'd already been admitted. So I mean, luckily I had the privilege to not have to go through that process. So I guess I can't really speak too much to it. But I mean, if I was to give some general tips or some loose tips, I just say, be yourself, perhaps do a little bit of preparation beforehand, understand what really drives you and what motivates you, be prepared for questions that ask about that, and really just convey yourself in the most holistic sense you can.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't have any specific experience to back that up with. And then to the second part of that question with the whole interviewing for medicine, if you want to like a different specialty or something. So luckily in the program, in the BSMD program, we don't have to interview for admission into medical school because that's already guaranteed, assuming you meet all the conditions and criteria. But then all medical students do actually have to interview for residency. So when you apply again to residency, you have to do the entire or you have to do the entire, write about yourself, make a personal statement, stuff like that, to apply to a bunch of residency programs, right? And then a select number of residency programs will offer you interviews. And then from those interviews, it's possible you receive admission to those programs, right? And so a lot of the times in residency interviews, they'll be asking you about, more clinical stuff, right? And then also like what you like to do in your free time. And so I also can't really speak to that because I don't know what kind of person I'll be in that time by that time. Like, I don't know if I could do an interview like that now because I don't know how many experiences I'm going to accumulate over the years and stuff. But I mean, honestly, I think it would just come down to the same thing, just presenting yourself as holistically as possible, presenting as many sides of yourself, the nuances that, define your character. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, I guess it's hard to say, but like, everyone gives you this advice of, oh, you should be yourself when it comes to admissions, right? But at the same time, like, it sounds trite, but you are like your own Spike, right? So, like, the point of these schools, the point of their admissions process is to, I made a post about this just recently, but it's a post, the goal is to like find awesome humans and basically build like the best. Imagine like a forest of humans or like a collection of humans. If you had to assemble this like group of people to find the, not even just like the most impressive or prestigious, but just like the coolest people possible. And a lot of people go into the admissions process trying to be as like perfect and round and slippery as possible, where it's like, I did 10 shadows at Mayo Clinic, and I also published in Science 5 times, first author. And it's like, well, like, okay, sure, that's really impressive, but like, we didn't get to know you at all, especially for programs like PLEMI, where you're going to Brown still, so you're still like expected to leverage open curriculum and have an open mind when it comes to what you're studying. Like, I personally think that it's better to go in the process trying to be as like, be so human it makes you uncomfortable. And that's the way that you can like stick out, that you can be memorable even without having like a spike. Because people will remember you for your honest insights, your honest vulnerabilities. Okay. So is it better to be, oh, so many good questions. Okay. I think we finished the, oh no, we have one more like pre-question. So okay, we'll get to this later. For BSMD programs, do they reduce the amount of tuition you have to pay generally?
No, not at least the program that I'm in. No, yeah, not at all. Yeah. Nope.
You're still
Nope.
paying Christina Paxson that big money. Okay. Additionally, can you talk more about like the fundraiser you hosted and how did you manage to raise that much money?
Sure. Yeah. So the fundraiser, again, it's affiliated with the Arifite Community of the USA, right? Is an organization that kind of culminates, Nigerian indigenes from all over the country. There are multiple chapters across the country. So there's a Texas chapter, California chapter, I believe there's a Kentucky chapter, something like that, and then there's a New Jersey chapter, Massachusetts chapter. The particular convention that I went to and co-hosted was the Massachusetts chapter. And so basically what I did and then my co-host did was that we presented basically on the incidence of eye disease, like glaucoma, stuff like that, cataracts disease in the Rufite community, in Nigeria. And then what we did was that we proposed several solutions, several options, that we could invest in and culminate money into to not only cure this need of our, of our people back home, but then also, prevent, things like that or conditions like that, developing in the future through eye diagnostic technology. And with the diagnostic technology, you can then treat the condition or you can identify the condition before it progresses to a point where it's incorrectable, it's uncorrectable. So yeah, so then how we're able to raise so much money, honestly, that's a great question. I guess we just had like nice donors or whatever. But I mean, yeah, it was a pretty big event. Like the event we went to in Massachusetts, it was a packed room. We went to a hotel, forget the name of the hotel, but yeah, it's just it's a culmination of a lot of Nigerian people like across the country who decide to attend that particular convention. And at the or after the presentation of our solution, the problem in our solution, perhaps it just moved them to be willing to donate individually, a certain amount of money that, I guess culminated it to like 35,000, for that kind of technology. So it's either it was a lot of people donating a decent amount, or there were a few rich people that donated like a good amount. So I mean, I still don't know to this day, but I mean,
Yeah.
so
Sure. Okay. Correction here. This is my bad. But so you talked about having to like do interviews for residency after uh going to Warren Alpert.
yeah.
But do you have to do like a specific program, maybe in PLME or even out of PLME, for different specialties in the medical field?
No, you actually don't, because basically how it works is in medical school, you do your first 2 years of preclinical. Like that's when you learn all the textbook stuff, the anatomy, the pathways, stuff like that, drugs, stuff like that. And then third year and fourth year are your clinical rotations where this pretty much just send you out to a variety of hospitals, doing rotations in pretty much all the specialties, psych, stuff like that. And then after that, towards the culmination of your fourth year, that's when you actually apply to residency programs affiliated with a particular hospital. So, you could go like Mass General or Mayo Clinic, stuff like that, right? And what you do, how it works, is opposed to the whole application process that's present within college applications. What you do is you rank your top programs, from 1 to however many you apply to, and then what the programs do is they rank the applicants or the medical students that apply to them. Like you rank them, like you can have like Mayo Clinic first, Mass Gen, stuff like that, and then what they'll do is they'll rank, this applicant first, this applicant second, this applicant third, right? And so what happens is that's why residency, you don't get accepted to residency, you match to residency. That's how they determine, right? Because what happens is an automatic system determines your match based on where you rank the program or the program ranks you. And so the thing is that there's a program at each hospital that you apply to for each specialty. So there could be neurosurgery at Mayo Clinic, there could be neurosurgery at Mass General, there could be neurosurgery at like the ICANN School of Medicine hospital, thing. And so yeah, that's how that entire process works. And then so you'd have to interview for all the programs that you apply to that offer you an interview. And so there's no separate program per se. The only thing of note there is that when you apply to residency for the PLME program, apparently your transcript is all the way through undergrad. Whereas normally you'd go to medical school, they just see your transcript per se for medical school. With this BSMD program, they'll see your transcripts all the way from freshman year to the end of medical school, since it's a combined program.
Oh wow, that's a big detail, I feel, because
Yeah.
then you have to like actually score well in undergrad stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned that you didn't have to interview to get into other BSMDs, right? Because you got into Brown early.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so general question here. Do you think it's better to be like an all-rounder when you're applying to maybe BSMDs, like IVs in general, I guess, or to pick like one niche? Niche? Is it niche or niche technically?
I think it's niche. I don't know, but
I pick based on the weather, honestly. Pick one niche and stick to it and be the best at it. So like kind of having that spike, you feel.
Yeah, so this was a big question that I was considering when I was trying to structure my extracurricular profile or portfolio as I was progressing through high school. Like there's the whole debate between being well rounded or having a spike. And basically, I guess where I lie, I think I'm a pretty big fan of having a spike or being excellent or nationally recognized, internationally recognized at something when it comes to applying for and getting into very selective programs, whether it be a school or it be a BSMD program or be any sort of program in that sense, because I think fundamentally comes down to while being well-rounded is a great thing and all, it's it's kind of like the saying you can be like jack of all trades but master of none. Whereas you could really pursue something, put time, dedicate time into one particular thing, and then have something to show for that. And it doesn't always even have to be things at the national level, like national level achievement or international level achievement, but it's more so like impact. Like for example, like my portfolio, I would say rested more on like the competitive side, trying to do things nationally and internationally. But other people may stand out in the sense that they have a decent amount of impact, right? Like they go out into their community and do something, right? And in that sense, they don't need to have all these like awards or anything like that or national recognition, but they have something that's profound about them. They have a spike in that sense, something that they dedicate time to, that they are passionate about. And it's I would say, I mean, again, I'm not an admissions officer, but it's a lot more, it's a lot more warming to see that than to see someone who is well rounded per se, but not showing any particular interest or dedication or passion to one particular activity. So I think, but honestly, I think you could kind of combine both, but more so lean on the spike side because be passionate at one thing, but then dip your toes into various other fields and endeavors, like so that would that would be my take on it. I'm personally a fan of the spike ideology. You're muted, Carson.
Okay, so you spoke a little bit about what you did in high school, with debate, and a bunch of other competitions and fundraising. This question's a pretty old question, but I feel like you've answered it, so I'm going to hit the accept button. And then a pretty important question here: how did you manage your time in high school with like all the different things you did?
Right. Yeah, great question. So I think it ultimately just, I mean, plain and simple, I think it ultimately comes down to discipline, right? So when I got home from school, I think now that I'm in college, looking back at the whole high school curriculum, you definitely have a lot more free time in high school than you do in college, right? So because the academic curriculum is a lot lighter, they actually make sure, or a lot, at least the school I went to, a lot of the teachers will space out your homework to make sure that they're not overwhelming you with too many tests or stuff like that. Obviously, there are exceptions to that rule, but in general, like you just have a lot more time, and with that time, I believe that it's fundamental that you do something, or that's crucial that you do something with that time, and so with regard to management of that time, so I would yeah, so I'd come back from school, make sure I did all my schoolwork, make sure I studied for all my tests, stuff like that, in advance to make sure I'm not like cramming and stuff like that. And then after that fact, I would look to, do things that were involved with my extracurriculars. Like, for example, preparing for a debate case. Because a lot of debate, at least the format that I did, was about preparation, putting in the time, putting in the research, the hours, stuff like that. And I kind of saw a question fly by in the chat. Did you sleep in high school? Pretty funny. I would say for the most part, yes. I mean, I remember I had to back when I used to take the bus to school, I had to wake up at 5 every morning to get on the bus and go to school because I lived like 30 minutes away from school. So I had to get sleep. Otherwise, like I would just like collapse during school. So I slept. But then obviously, again, there were some exceptions to that, what I was willing to do for the competition. I remember I would spend like nights, like long nights preparing debate cases like a few days before the tournament and stuff, like just making sure all my cards are and all my facts that I'm ready to, dispel them out to make sure I know the case well enough, staying up, really late. I'd still sleeping, for the most part, but then, making sure I have that dedication, to forego something that might be, harmful in the short term, but then you know it could be beneficial in the long term. So yeah, and then the same thing with DECA, the business competition, like making sure that we're correcting all the minutia in the business plan, the few days before we submit, and then just making sure that we have our presentation ready to go, that we know our business idea. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely big. I want to add on to this because you neglected to include this for some reason, but essentially, um, students, friends, whatever, wisdom is like very well known within. Um, I guess we don't live there anymore, but we used to live in this dorm called Emerald, Emery Woolley, and he's very well known within the Emerald community for his usage of the Pomodoro technique, aka Pomos, and like you're downplaying this obviously wisdom, but like one thing I noticed about him, about wisdom's friends, and also other people in the pre-med track at Brown, not even pre-med, just pre-med at Brown, is that they have like a very, very strong work ethic, and they are like intentional about how they structure their deep work time. And it's not like the most important thing I realized is that like they're not distracted very easily. Right. Like even in a very busy environment, like these people are locked in and they are hammering this essay down so that they're hammering their work down so that they can actually move on to the next assignment and be on track. Right. Like me personally, I'm very easily distracted. So like maybe that's something that if I was a high school student about to go into like a pre-med track, I would work on because I know memorization is a big element of it, but also so is like the practical like applications of what you've learned, and to retain and take in all that knowledge, it's super super important that like you manage your time well, and not just your time, but like your deep work time, because how do I say this, like okay, so wisdom has like this yeah, he has this Pomodoro sections, right? But he also has like this we have a deep work tracker, right? Or something like that. I saw you show me once. It had like a graph of like the sorry for outing you here, but it had like the graph of like the deep work over time. And that like feedback, I don't know if this is so valuable because a lot of the time, like you're putting work in, and until you get into college or until you get a test back or whatever, you don't have feedback for like your inputs, right? But if you shorten the feedback loop so that as you work, you are getting feedback back. Is this work good? Like, what do I need to improve on? It lets you be more productive, more focused, and more effective long term, right? Because if you only see what you're doing every test, right? If you only see how you're doing every single test, then you have like months or weeks between like tests for improvement. But if you have something like that where you can actually like track, okay, how much work am I doing? Is this work effective on the daily? Imagine like a line, right? That's like 1 point here, 1 point here, right? That's like your trajectory for improvement normally. But if you take the chance to improve, let's say at the same rate as this line is growing. Sorry for the math, but like if you take the chance to improve every single day at the same rate as that line over time, you're gonna see that like you're gonna build up faster and faster and faster. Hopefully that makes sense. So definitely like track your time, track your time, track your time. Um, okay, does admissions take into consideration commitments at home or ability to go to ECs when looking at your application?
Okay, so also another good question. Fortunately, I'm not an admissions officer, so I can't give you a definite answer on that. However, the way I believe the admissions process works for both, not only general college admissions but also selected programs is it's kind of a reflection of the way you use the resources provided to you. So if you're coming from a low income household, if you're coming from an area that doesn't really have much that you can do, but you're still doing something which like proportional to the resources you have is still considered a very high level of achievement. I would say that that's very valuable in the eyes of admissions officers. Like some of the friends that I have around me come from lower or income households, but then their extracurricular portfolios, their academic portfolios, based on the resources they have, are actually really impressive when you can consider it proportionally, right? So that's definitely something that call that college admissions officers will take into account. With regard to home commitment activities specifically, I think as long as you kind of describe that commitment in, perhaps some writing supplements that you submit to the college, I think it will help convey that that aspect of yourself, that commitment that you have, because you can't really list home commitments as something on your Common App, or something on your academic extracurricular portfolio. But if you talk about it in your supplements, in a unique way, in a way that not many people would, I believe that it can help you, or it can help the college admissions officer see your achievement proportionally. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking about essays, what did you talk about in your personal statement, and how did you showcase your passion for medicine? And
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, so my Common App, my general essay was about driving, actually, because when I looked at writing supplements and all the tips online that there are for how to write for college applications, I think the biggest piece of advice that stood out with me, or that stood out to me, is the idea of, and after seeing all these successful essays and stuff like that, is in order to stand out, you have to first look at your prompt question and then answer in a way that you think not many people would. That's the biggest piece of advice that I can give someone there when it comes to writing, right? So making sure, one, that your writing supplements, your essays, have hook statements that draw the reader in, and then also talking about something that's unique, right? Something that speaks to you, that conveys an aspect of your personality, but isn't like cliche or anything, as you may see in a lot of college essays and stuff like that. But yeah, so for my college general essay, I wrote about driving. I kind of talked about the nuance of driving and how it's an activity that I actually really loved, doing, even though I started driving when I was 16, so I wasn't doing it all of high school. But I kind of used it as a metaphor for my life, and how you have to place your trust in the unknown every single time you step into a car, because no matter how meticulous, no matter how controlled you are when you're driving, one person's mistake, or something that's out of your control can, quite literally, like, end your life, or cause turmoil, or cause things to get out of hand, right? And so I kind of use that as a metaphor for my own life, as to how fundamentally every single day you have to step out of your house, you have to put your trust in the unknown, and trust where it will lead you, and still at the same time do all that you can do, control what you can control, but use that as a stepping point to access greater heights in life and stuff, just being able to acknowledge that. So that's kind of what I wrote about there. Obviously in a more nuanced sense than that. I don't know if I described it, I gave homage to it as well as I
Yeah.
possibly could have. But yeah, and then so for Brown, the general application has 3 prompts, or had 3 prompts. I think they're different now, but one of them was, why did you choose Brown? Or why Brown? Why the open curriculum? How would you use the open curriculum? I remember I started it off with a hook statement, and it was like swish, like clank, swish, clank, like like mimicking basketball sounds. Then I went into it, I was like, yeah, that's the basketballs hit the, like I I described the scene when my partner and I had just lost from DECA the day, or I think the day before. I didn't say that because I would come off as like a little, like, pretentious and stuff like that. But like, it was a scene when we were like shooting hoops, trying to come up with ideas, trying to innovate for a new business plan, like what problem we're going to solve and stuff like that. So while that particular supplement didn't say that, that's kind of the context around it. But I didn't say that because, like, if I just talked about a competition, that could come off as cliche, or pretentious, or whatever, right? So, but I talked about the actual root of what we were doing, the idea of innovating and stuff like that, and how the open curriculum also allows people to innovate, and how, in addition to taking pre-med courses, you could take something outside of your course requirements, like Engine 90, which is introduction to entrepreneurial management or something like that. So then, yeah, then my second prompt for Brown, it was like, how did you respond to when someone disagreed with you or something like that? Honestly, I don't even that prompt. I hated that prompt so much. But I mean, I think I wrote about just like a disagreement in English class, and how, and what process I undertook to think about how to respond effectively, but then respectfully, but then also communicate my ideas and stuff like that. Again, starting with the hook statement, so it drew the reader in. Starting off with like a dialogue thing, and then talking about the scenario and stuff. Then the last one, which was my favorite prompt, it was tell me about something that brings you joy, or talk about something that brings you joy. And so I talked about architecture in that supplement. Like, I started off, like, the hook was like, like light design, structure, something like that, like all with like periods after them, and like like a unique way to start like the supplement. And then I went into it describing it, describing like why architecture brought me joy and like why there's so many things to appreciate in a structure, and how, you know, how you can inevitably make architecture your own, and then how I think how every space that I inevitably step into, like I'll try and make my something like that. So like try and make my own, like how you step into a space and make it your own in a sense. I don't know, stuff like that. But obviously, hopefully worded a lot better than that. But yeah, so that's what I did for those three. And then there are three more PLME supplements. Again, they could be changed from the years that I applied, but the year that I applied. But the first one was, how do you bring a unique perspective to medicine or something? And so for that one, what did I even talk about? I talked about um being a beneficiary, or I think I talked about like being a beneficiary of like modern medicine and stuff like that. And I don't know, like I think I talked about being like a premature baby born through like unconventional means, stuff like that, stuff that was very specific to my scenario, and then how that allowed me to gain an appreciation and interest for medicine, stuff like that. And so that's pretty much what I did for the first one. The second one, kind of forget it, kind of blanked on what the second one is. I don't think it was a why medicine, but it was a, because I remember I responded to it in the sense, I responded to it by saying, or what do you want to bring to medicine? Like, how will you impact medicine as a physician? Something like that, right? And so I remember I responded to it by talking about how communication is key. And then the story that I used to link into that was how I was misdiagnosed with a peanut allergy when I was little, and then my doctor told me that I actually didn't have a peanut allergy. And so I kind of described that entire scenario and how, like, communication is key, because if, things would have been communicated better, both on my part and then perhaps maybe even the doctor's part, I wouldn't have gone, through the whole like othering that having an allergy is for young kids, like having to not partake in a certain food whereas everybody else is partaking in it, stuff like that. And so I just talked about that. Then in the third and final supplement, it was why PLME, I think. And so I just talked about how the program gives you a unique perspective on medicine, combining the humanities with the sciences, and how that unique intersection, that point of intersection, is something that's very valuable for a physician. And I just talked about that. And yeah, and I think that's also what the program is looking for, people who can identify that unique intersection between the humanities and the sciences, and how that's crucial to being a physician, and how the program uniquely allows you to access that by, taking off the reins and allowing you to pursue that which you're truly passionate in. So yeah, that's what I wrote about for my
Wow.
writing. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. And it makes sense though, right? Like being able to go into detail about like your own experiences. And this is the main thing, to like draw insights from them. Because like anyone can live a life, but like the people that these selective holistic admissions colleges want are people who will draw something from that experience, not just like a memory, but insights and valuable like lessons and other things, I guess, that they can share with the community, right? That having that experience that you wrote about in your essay makes you a better member of Yale or Brown or Cornell, whatever community, right? Yeah, because anyone can say that, oh, I volunteered at Mayo Clinic, Mayo Clinic, whatever, right? Anyone can say that I shadowed this, I did this research, but the people that these colleges want are the people who can actually draw from that experience in a way that's so specifically personal that it's not cliche. Okay, we're talking about family diseases and health issues in the why medicine section. Question: sound like pity seeking and affect my application negatively?
Wait, what was the question? You kind of cut out.
Yeah, sorry. Would like talking about family diseases / health issues in the why medicine question sound like you're kind of looking for pity or negatively affect your application at all?
So I would say no, as long as it's done in the right way, right? Because if you look at a bunch of, I'm sure, like if you look at a bunch of, essays that people will write, and honestly, sometimes even successful essays. A lot of them will talk about, dire topics, emotional topics, stuff like that, stuff that really emanates with them. And so the fact that a lot of people are doing it means that admissions officers are going to be used to that sort of thing. So then where you differentiate yourself is in how you do it, right? And so I would say, as long as you really not too much focusing on the scenario that you're discussing, but more so how that scenario relates to you as a person and how it says something about you, I would say that's a way in which you can really, really supplement your application and really benefit it. On a side note to that, a lot of the kids that I know in the program, I think, wrote about some sort of medical condition or like disease that they had. Like, for example, one of my friends, Griffin, he had brain cancer, and so I think he wrote about that in one of his supplements. And so yeah, another friend had like some severe allergies and stuff like that, so they wrote about that in their supplements. But I would say a lot of kids are doing that. It's just how they did it that allowed them to be successful and get into the program. So I don't think it would
Yeah.
harm the application as long as it was done right.
Perfect answer. Okay, some more nitty-gritty questions. We are almost done though. So, okay, you win speech and debate twice or DECA twice. You got different events for each of the times. You put them individually on the honor section, in my opinion. Actually, no, let's hear you first. What do you think? You win speech and debate twice or DECA twice.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a different event for each of the times. Do you put them individually on the honor section?
So in the honors, okay, so yeah, I remember in the honors section of my Common App, so I took the biggest things that I had, like the international stuff and then the national stuff, which then the national stuff that wasn't at a very high national level, but was still national something, and then I ranked them in order of importance, right? So it goes international, not necessarily like placing anything, just being recognized internationally, and then like the national stuff and then national stuff where you weren't recognized specifically. And so regardless of what activity that was in, I put it there. So I remember I put in at the time I was applying, I put in the DECA International first place. I put in the speech and debate national level, like, recognition. I put in the national Spanish exam, national level recognition. And then I think that was all the national internet. Oh, and then I put in the DECA internationally recognized. And then I put in any other space that I had. I put in state stuff. So first place at states that same year that we won the international thing. And then yeah. And then so those are the things. So the stuff that I actually put in the honors section were the biggest things that I had, right? Ranked in order of importance from highest level, recognized specifically, then highest level, not recognized specifically, right? In that order. And then for the additional information section, I put as much stuff as I could possibly, think to put there, because it's like, you might as well. Like, I don't think there's any harm in, just saying or talking as much about it, everything you did in high school as possible. Even the smallest award that I could have won, even if it's a local school award, I just put at the bottom. And then in that section, in that additional information section, I ranked it in order of, national or international distinctions, stuff like that. But then I also talked a lot about leadership in those clubs as well in that section. And then I ranked those and separated those by activity, like speech and debate, did this, won this, mentored these people to where they were able to go and do this and stuff like that. So I talked a lot about that. And then I also talked about more of my, more menial activities, like being a part of the quiz bowl team, stuff like that. That really didn't even amount to anything, but I mean, it's worth putting there.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did for the honor section. And then everything that didn't make it there went to the additional information section.
Okay, so you kind of ranked them like by scope, and if you had two activities that had like a decent scope, like national or international, for example, but there were different topics, you split them up, right? For DECA, for example. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so fresh question. Sorry, we'll get to all of them, I promise. So you went first at DECA, then went to internationals. Even if you did not win at the international level, could you put it separately and say that you were an ICDC finalist and then won first at state?
Yes, yeah. Like, I wouldn't put them under. I don't think it's possible. I don't even think it's possible to put. I don't think you even have enough space to put them together. And even if I did, I probably wouldn't have. Like if I won first at states that year, but then didn't place at internationals, I would put the like assuming I was recognized, like I just get my percentile, like grab my percentile from the international thing, put that there because at least that's some sort of international something, right? Put that there and honestly put it above the state thing, then put the state thing if there weren't any other national or international things that I could put there. And then anything else that didn't make it went into the additional information section. So yeah, that's
Great.
how I went.
Like definitely looking at the scope of your extracurriculars or your honors especially is pretty simple and like straightforward way to maximize like I don't know the bang for your buck, the impressiveness of your application. And even if it's just a percentile, honestly, like that still counts. It still counts. A lot of people will write college applications and then disqualify themselves for some reason, or disqualify their own activities or like experiences or honors or something. And it's like I say this sometimes. If the admissions offices wanted you to make decisions on applications, they would have hired you. It's not that's not your job. You just like you be your best self and you apply and you put out your best stuff on paper. And if it's trash, I'll tell you. But if it's good, you also hear back. So like don't worry about how it's perceived. Just like do your best or whatever. But like still, you know what I mean? Just full send, give your best. Okay. Another question. Was soccer a huge commitment for you? And did working on the fundraiser give you insights on teamwork that you could share?
All right,
These were some of the
so
things that was super cool that you had like an in-person event and it must have taken a lot of previous planning.
yeah. So first question, was soccer a huge commitment for me? No, it definitely was not. It was more so. I mean, actually, okay, commitment in the sense of the time that I put into it, like outside of the organized structure time that we had to put into it. No, it was not like a commitment in any sense of that word whatsoever. However, it was pretty honestly time consuming because every single during the fall season, every single day after school, we had to go to the practice from 3:30 to 5:30, and then we'd have games obviously that we go to and stuff. But and with regard to how good I wasn't like I don't think I was horrible, but I wasn't like good. Like I didn't start, and I played varsity like towards my later years, not towards my earlier years. But okay, honestly, that could just be because like our team was pretty good. But I mean, okay. Well, anyway, but yeah, it wasn't that big of a commitment outside of the structured time we had, but it did take a good amount of time, especially junior year. Like the weekend practices sometimes that we'd have to, attend, like that would be pretty time consuming and stuff. And, painful in terms of work and physical stuff we had to do. So like running, I hate running. It's just so annoying. But yeah, so I mean it wasn't that much of a commitment outside of the time that was structured for it. So yeah.
Great, thank you. But even though it wasn't big of a oh my god, even though it wasn't like a huge commitment, it's still like added to your application, I think, and at least in the variety. Because as you said before, like applicants who like dip their toes to different things, especially for Brown, like that's a good thing. I feel like to be different areas. Okay. How many AP IB classes did you take in high school?
Oh, let's see. All right. So unique thing about our school, we didn't have access. We weren't allowed to start taking APs officially until junior and senior year. So I'm seeing a lot of kids at other schools that'll be taking APs their freshman, their sophomore year. Like, yeah, our school traditionally didn't allow for that, but I think I emailed someone. Like, I heard a bunch of kids in my grade were emailing people to take like this one AP course, and so I was like, okay, I want to do that too. Actually, I mean, I think it was just like a natural progression. Like, it'd be better to take the AP after we took the introductory class than to wait a year and then take it. So yeah, so I was able to take an AP, one AP my sophomore year. That was AP biology, just because we had just completed introductionary biology in freshman year. So I just wanted to continue along that path just to end the series. And then junior year, I took AP Chem, I took A Push, AP Calc BC, and AP Lang. Yeah. Then senior year, I took AP Stat. I took I took AP Spanish, I took, I think it's a writing one. I don't know, but yeah. So AP Stat, AP Spanish. What else was there? There's another. Oh, AP Lang, and I think that was all I took my senior year. So yeah. So however many APs that is total, I only apply. I mean, I guess they were on my transcripts when I applied because it would have the courses listed for the next like semester. But yeah. So yeah. So AP Bio, I got a 5. AP US History, I got a 5. AP Lang, I got a 4. Um, what else? What else? AP Calc, 4. Um, and what else was there? That's it, right? Yeah. A
I stopped
Push.
counting.
Huh? Yeah. A Push, AP Bio, AP Chem. Yeah. Those were my 3 5s, and AP Lang 4, Calc 4. And yeah. And then senior year, those APs didn't really matter. So
Yeah. Okay. So Annalise is asking, do threes and AP exams look bad?
I mean, if you can get credit for the threes, submit the. Oh well, don't. Okay, I would say don't apply with them because I don't think they help you in any sense to apply with the score. But like, if you get in after, then you can send the score and then still get credit for the score. So I think it just
Yeah.
comes down to that. I think 4s and 5s actually help the application. So I'll just focus on those.
Yeah. Especially for like some of these schools like Brown, for example. Like Brown is very stingy with the credit it gives you. It's actually it's more liberal with like pre-meds and like the whole biology, chemistry track. But like outside of that, like Brown really, really tries hard not to give you any credit for anything. Like you have to have
Yeah.
a 6 or a 7 in an IB, like a 5 in an AP, maybe a
Mhm.
4. I don't know if they give you 4s because they're very
Oh,
like,
actually, wait. Actually, no. AP Calc. I don't know. I remember AP Calc. I got a 3, but the AP Calc AB score was a 4. So yeah, never mind. Yeah.
mm,
Oh, and yeah, and that actually brings up a great point. For that, I didn't send in the AP Calc because it was a 3, right? I didn't send in the AP Calc score until after I got in, so I could get the credit for the AP Calc AB or BCE score. And then so I got, so yeah, so I did that after the fact. Like I didn't apply with that because like obviously it wouldn't help the
did you get
application.
credit for Math 90?
I
Or
did, yeah, but
oh
I didn't
wow,
get credit for Math 100. So
oh
I
wow,
mean, like if I was to switch to like neuroscience or something, I'd have to take that. So definitely really try as hard as you can on those calcs because taking intro math in
yeah,
college is
not
like
fun.
like yeah,
And it'll take you very far, honestly. Like
yeah.
the most bang for your buck you definitely get is out of like a math class or AP math.
Yeah. And I also saw a question, like just quickly, I guess, to while we're talking about stats, I saw something about GPA and SAT. So my GPA, we were on the the 4.0 scale. I don't know, but it was a weighted GPA. So I had a 4.37 graduating GPA. Well, or at least when I applied. And then so that like got me into our school's cum laude society when they take the top 10% of GPAs. So or kids with the top 10% GPAs. Yeah. And so that was my GPA. My SAT super score was a 1550. Breakdown was an 800 math and a 750 reading. So yeah. But I mean, honestly, like with the SAT, I mean, I don't know about the SAT now, but the SAT math section that I took that got me that 800 was one of the kids from algebra 1 could have done that. Like
Yeah,
there's real variation between the difficulty of each test, right?
yeah,
So that's why
it's
I would definitely recommend taking multiple SATs because while some math sections were like a lot harder than others, like the one that I took that one day, it was just beautiful. Like how it was like 1 + 1, 1 + X = 2. And
yeah,
I was like, thank you, right? So yeah, honestly, anybody in my calc class could have perfect scored that section as well.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And definitely like try to take multiple if you can because the curves are like sometimes the curves are from hell. Like I have gone through dozens of SATs over time, over the last was it like 8 years now of SATs? Yeah. And like some curves, you miss one question, you are now at a 780, right? Some curves, you miss two questions, you are still at 800. So It's definitely a big difference.
Yeah, but I mean, like with SAT strategy too, I feel like objectively, I mean, maybe it's just me, like when it comes to increasing your score, the first thing that you should focus on, unless you already are like perfect in that sense, is increasing your math score. Because while the reading section is subjective or somewhat subjective, I guess depends on how you see it, right? Like the math section is either right or it's wrong, right? And there's a specific explanation as to why it's right or why it's wrong. There's no like flowery nonsense that you'll see in the reading section, right? So the math section is the easiest thing that you can improve. So making sure you're getting reps in, making sure you're checking your answers. If you don't know how to solve the problem, plug each answer into the equation and see what works, what checks and stuff. Yeah, just do it like that, and then just make sure you know your principles, know your circles, know your trigonometry, and then I would say that that's the easiest section to improve. Reading section is a lot harder, a lot more prep that needs to go into that. That's why it plagues so many students. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Don't you just send all SAT scores though? When I look back, bad if you take it many times. Okay. I think this is actually completely speculative, and I have zero right at all to be like saying what I'm about to say. But I still think that like under three SATs and under, I feel like is normal, or is like normal enough. 4 or 5 SATs, okay. More than that, weird. So if you have to take the SAT 3 times to get a score in the middle 50 for your school, take it 3 times. If you have to take it 4 times, ideally you get one in the top 75% or the top 25%. But still, like, take it because like this is the most like baseline thing you can improve about your application is just make sure that you get into that range for your school, right? Every school has that common data set, has a range of average student, below average student at the school, above average student at the school in terms of SAT score only. And like just hitting that 50 percentile is just like you do it once and then you're done and you can breathe. So I would try to take under three or under if possible. Do you recommend SAT or digital SAT?
Oh, I mean, I haven't taken this digital SAT that they're talking about, but I've heard, I've heard that apparently the test changes in difficulty based on how you do in
Yeah.
the previous side. Yeah, there's no chance that I'd be taking unless for some reason there's some way that it's easier. Like personally, there's no way that I'm taking the digital SAT over the paper SAT because as I was saying with that math section, you're telling me that if I would have done really well in that very easy math section on this digital SAT, they would have been giving me like calculus 3 level problems on the second section. Like yeah, I personally wouldn't engage in that. But I mean,
Yeah.
as long as it's still an option, I would still take the paper SAT. I don't know for the reading section, it might be a little more lenient because then if you're just
Yeah.
bombing all the questions in the on the first part, then
Yeah.
the test can help you out. But I mean, with the math section, it's only going to get harder if you get the easy questions and you're lucky enough to get the easy questions. Yeah, no, I probably wouldn't want to do that. So
I think the way they do is they have like 2 sections per like reading, 1 section or 2 sections per reading, 2 sections per math. And like if you suck at the first section of math, they like feed you into like a lower version of the math where your max score is 590 or something like that. Maybe I just like saw this on like a poster or whatever. And then the same thing with like reading. So I don't think it gets harder, but it does get like easier if you are struggling in that first section.
mhm.
Okay. So that's on digital SAT and SAT. Definitely leverage the SAT or digital SAT if you can. I know that like most of the practice tests, especially the ones I recommend over on the accelerator, are paper, but it's still like a good chance to get the reps in. Okay, last 2 questions, and then we're gonna close up shop. And I'm gonna have some last words for you guys. One, do you think international students and Asian students are at a disadvantage applying to BSMD programs or any highly competitive programs for that matter?
So I honestly, yeah, I think this is the central. This is central dogma. It is even based on the people that I know who are international. I'll say yes, it is significantly harder. Not even just for BSMD programs, but for getting into U.S. colleges in general. It is significantly harder for international students to get in, just because one, I would say that there's a lot more competition because everybody's trying to get to these like top universities in the U.S. But then also even from an admissions standpoint, like they want to see something. I would say that the admissions officers want to see something, extraordinary from people who are coming out of country to, be able to bring them, admit them into their college. Even though, like, I don't think they provide financial aid now. Like, I'm pretty sure all international students, at least now, are like full tuition or something. I don't know, but I would say yeah, it's significantly harder for international students. Um, I don't think it should be though. Like I don't think that's right fundamentally, but I definitely think it is for the international students that I know. Like for example, this one girl that I know, her chemistry curriculum that she did in high school was miles, years above the stuff that I was doing in high school, and that was her base curriculum. Like she went to a top school there and was able to, obviously get into Brown, that way and stuff like that. But I think it's definitely not only would I think that they have a harder curriculum, but then also a more scrupulous college admissions process. So I would say, yeah. But that doesn't mean it's not impossible. And that doesn't mean it's impossible. So I would say still go for it, do the best and forget the rest. That's what they say.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's definitely very competitive. I have like the photo of the Pleme class for our year up. And first of all, half of these people live in Elmwood. It's really crazy. I see like so many familiar faces here. But secondly, like there are people from everywhere around the world here. So I don't think you should discount yourself. If you're from a different background, then you might imagine Brown usually takes because they take everyone. And Brown's a place for everyone. And um if you're a fit, you'll probably be here. Okay. Last question. Do you have any tips for the interviews applying to BSMDs? I know you said they didn't do any interviews, but you also said like be yourself. Could you give me like a little bit more about like what do you think is like the philosophy that these BSMD programs have? And how could you do that in an interview?
All right. So, I mean, I think one thing that connects all BSMD programs with regard to their mission, their motive for even being there in the first place is they want to identify individuals at a young age, at a young level, young academic level in high school who are committed to the path of medicine, right? And so what that means is it would make sense that during interviews they're looking for evidence of that, right? So that could be shown through your extracurriculars, like making sure you have some sort of like clinical experience, but whether that be volunteering or shadowing or I also shadowed during high school. I don't know if I had said that. Like I shadowed primary practice and then I like would weigh people and then like bring them to the room or something. But yeah, did that too. But then so I would say that's primarily what they're looking for, and being able to communicate that in your interview is something that would be very valuable for you, very beneficial for your chances. And then also, I would say bringing a unique perspective to medicine, specifically with, I would think that if the program in liberal medical education at Brown were to have interviews, that would be a key thing that they are looking for, or that they would be looking for, and they could evaluate that in various ways. They could ask you a question that isn't directly related about medicine and then, have you tie it back to medicine or something like that. So yeah, I would say that's what they look for. And then, with regard to ways you can communicate that, just, I mean, prepare, answers, responses beforehand, how you can connect various things about your experiences back to medicine. But yeah, I would say that's one thing that they would all have in common if they were to have something in common, just being committed to medicine and showing evidence of that.
For sure. Absolutely. And our final question, how did you get shadowing experience? Did you apply somewhere? Or did you cold email medical professionals?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, ways a lot of people do, they'll just email someone, or even in the volunteering aspect, they'll see doctors and they'll offer like shadowing experiences. Like for example, I was seeing a doctor one time, like after like for shin splints from soccer, and the guy offered me shadowing experience, if I wanted to take him up on it, during when I was still in high school. But for me specifically, I have the privilege that my parents are doctors, and so it was a family friend that I was able to go and shadow. So yeah, that's how I shadowed that specific person. But I mean, even if your parents aren't doctors, there are ways to, I guess, get around that, like whether it be emailing someone or even your local family practice person, like someone who actually has taken the time to know you, like your pediatrician who will see you periodically. Like at one of the visits, you could just ask them if you could shadow for a day or something like that, or regularly, and be able to get experience that way. You know, but yeah, I mean, also, I mean, I don't think shadowing experience is that important. It's something that adds to your portfolio, but it's not really that important because it's obviously known that it's harder for students to get that sort of experience, whereas it's a lot easier to just volunteer at a hospital and get to be in the clinical environment that way as opposed to shadowing. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I know that Adi also like okay, this was a funny story. This was coming back from Austin after Quidditch Nationals. So he randomly like ran into somebody and struck up a conversation with like, this random dude, I think, who's also going to Boston somehow. And he was like, yeah, I'm interested in like this kind of I'm interested in kind of medicine or whatever. And just like that, like on the metro, he got this shadowing opportunity to basically like work in this guy's or to shadow this guy's practice. And like, okay, yes, he's already in college, but that kind of just like layers into my point where I'm saying that like there are so many opportunities that are like close by available that are easier to achieve than like cold emailing people. Like you start with the people around you. Going in person is super helpful because people have a hard time turning people down in person, or like going to people that you have connections with tangentially before you cold email people. Because colding, like the conversion between like going to people that you know or who know someone you know, or like maybe even kind of relate to you, same area, same interest, whatever, to cold emailing is it's a huge drop. Because the second like you're in someone's email, like you have to deal with are they going to open the email? Are they going to read the whole email? Are they going to think you're legit? Are they going to think it's like definitely still leverage cold emailing, but like I think for every hour you put in warm outreach, like talking to people that you already know, you get what you'd get in 5 hours of cold emailing. Okay. Hopefully that answers your questions. I know that there's still a lot of things. Like we've answered a lot. There's probably more questions coming in. Um, good news is that we'll have more Q and A's. I plan on doing this for a long time, so I don't know. Like, what did you guys think? Do you think we should bring in like put your answers in the chat? Let me know how what you thought of the Q and A. Was it like good? Was it trash? Whatever. And like, maybe who you want to see in future Q and A's because I was thinking, like you mentioned, Griffin. I was thinking like Haley as well, maybe Saloni. Just like pre meds as well. Or those are all Pliny students, by the way. Like those four are all Pliny's, but like also other students in other areas at Brown and other schools, not just Brown. Like, I can get one of our mentors on a Q&A next week to explain the pre med process at Harvard, for example, and hopefully that flushes it out for you guys so you can see it from different perspective. Like, first of all, I really appreciate you for being here, Wisdom, because like your insights are super helpful. Clearly, you can see in the chat, and like as the recording goes out in the future, you'll see that more people like really appreciated it. However, at the same time, these students now get the wealth of having like your experiences, right? Your lessons, and then hopefully what we do here is that we give them like a huge selection of like experiences and foresight so that you can essentially experience like hopefully dozens of college application processes, hopefully dozens of like first semester, second semesters, so you can get the lessons without the scars. And if we can do that here, I'd be super excited. And that's what I'm trying to do here. So, oh my god, I had you for like almost 2 hours. I can't believe you all stayed. I this is crazy. I didn't expect like listen. I just like texted you 2 weeks ago. I was like, hey, you want to like do a Q&A? And it kind of happened. So I'm just so glad to have all you here. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart that you took the time out of your day to come listen to some pre-med knowledge. And yeah, I thank you all for being here. You can text me over school or like do something in the chat if you have like any like, future questions or like requests for future Q&As or anything. But overall, I just really, really appreciate you, Isle, and I'm super glad that you came today.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
always a pleasure. Yeah, thank you guys for entertaining me for this long.
Yeah, for
Thank you guys
sure.
for
Of
listening.
course.
Right.
All right. If that is all for today, I will close everything down. But this recording, because you guys are, I will send this to you. Don't worry. You came here. You're alive. You're getting the recording first before anyone else does. Just as a thank you for your time. All right. Good night, everyone. I will see you later this week.